But even as Halloween was dressing its old customs in new costumes, it was also creating new traditions, bad ones. Was Halloween in the early 20th century getting out of hand? To the dismay of authorities and property owners, the answer was yes.
It was whatever you could think of that was a bunch of mischief. Back in those days, people had buggies. The bigger kids tried to take a buggy and put it up on a haystack. And there's about a half a dozen of the guys, and they just kind of pushed it up the haystack. It was a lot of fun. Oh, we never did anything that was really destructive. Mostly tricks.
But for others, those tricks were more destructive. Pranks, usually committed by adolescent boys, plagued cities like Chicago and Philadelphia. By the 1920s, Halloween in America was turning into a crisis. Tricks on Halloween night were out of hand.
The destructive pranks went beyond just smashing pumpkins. Kids would take bars of soap and they'd put them in the rails for streetcars so that the streetcars would derail and people would actually get hurt. They would take the steps in front of people's doors and move them so when people walked outside they would fall over and get hurt. They would set fires. They would throw stones through windows. I mean, this is really destructive stuff.
In rural communities, pranksters took wagons apart and reassembled them on roofs. They removed gates on farm fences so that animals could escape. This particular prank was so popular that in some places the night before Halloween was called Gate Night. In other cities it was Mischief Night or even Hell Night. Halloween pranks during the Great Depression may have been, in part, a product of the desperation of the time, an excuse for troublemaking. But there was already trouble everywhere, and many communities couldn't afford to feed their own, much less clean up destructive messes.
The Halloween of 1933 was actually labeled Black Halloween in a lot of newspapers because of all of the destruction that the cities incurred. The kids were no longer just doing innocent, silly things. Now they were smashing light bulbs. They were setting fire to buildings. They were smashing car windows.
If Halloween were to survive, it would have to change.
Schools and police departments and other civic groups consciously and very actively promoted the idea of taming Halloween.
And so they started to invent all sorts of things for kids to do, to divert them. Townwide parties, costume contests, games, everything that you could think of to get the kids away from pulling tricks and into the light.
Novelty companies like Dennison and Beistel helped out these civic efforts. Dennison published a series of Halloween guides called Bogey Books that suggested ways of turning Halloween from a prank night into a party night.
Dennison was one of the first companies that realized there was money to be made off of Halloween. They started to put their own Halloween materials out for retail sale in drugstores all over America.
They also made masks and paper costumes. This was a first. It was the first time that costumes were specifically made and marketed for Halloween. Before that, costumes had all been homemade.
When I was a kid, it wasn't Halloween outfits like you wear now. So basically you wore your overalls or your jeans or sloppy clothes, but you didn't go downtown and buy a special outfit just for Halloween. Just anything, you know, to make yourself a little conspicuous.
Paper costumes were fancy and an improvement on the homemade variety, but they had their drawbacks.
Unfortunately, a lot of that paper was flammable. And I was surprised at how many newspaper clippings I came across of costumes catching fire.
Soon, other manufacturers, looking to tap into the kid market for Halloween costumes, began making more durable disguises.